Okay, calm down.
We're talking with Yousef Munayyer, who is a Palestinian American analyst and head of the Israel-Palestine program at the Arab Center of Washington, D.C. So, Yousef, welcome.
Hi there, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for joining. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. Actually, the reason I want to have you on initially was I was at one of the protests. I was at the protest at Grand Central Station that shut down Grand Central Station, and I was streaming Instagram, and someone wrote to me because I caught some of the projections that they were doing on the building across the street, and one of those projections was from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And I was streaming that, and someone texted me like, "Really? You're streaming calls for genocide?" And I was with my friend, and I was like, "What do I even say to this?" He goes, "Oh, send him Yousef Munayyer's piece on that." And I went to Jewish Currents, and I found your piece, and I did send it to him. But I had wanted to have you on to talk about that. And then, of course, that slogan is even more newsworthy because, as people know, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib was censured over that phrase. So, can you tell us what that phrase really means and its significance and relevance in this moment?
In some ways, it's crazy that we are even talking about a protest slogan at a time where there are um, thousands of people who've been killed in the Israeli bombardment on Gaza. Um, but it's not unrelated, and that's sort of the departure point that I will take to kind of explain this. Um, you know, when I wrote that piece for Jewish Currents, it was in 2021, and it was in relation to some of the events that took place in May of that year, where we saw, Israel attempting to force Palestinians out of their homes in Jerusalem, which coincided as well with Israeli police raids on the Haram al-Sharif and the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Laylat al-Qadr, one of the holiest nights of the month of Ramadan, which really set off a mobilization across the entirety of the land that exists between the river of Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea, the land which we Palestinians call home, and the land that we call Palestine. And obviously, other people have different names for this land. But for us, this is Palestine, and this is where we are from. I think that moment represented, not just represented, but was the single largest national mobilization of Palestinians since 1936, where you had all of the different communities within Palestine, whether they were Palestinians living under occupation in the West Bank or in Jerusalem, or Palestinian citizens of Israel, or Palestinians living under occupation and siege in Gaza. All of them were responding to this moment. And this idea of from the river to the sea not just represents a geographic space, but it represents a response to policies of fragmentation that have sought to divide Palestinians into these different, smaller, weaker cantons, so that they cannot push back against the policies of Zionism, which do this to them. And so 2021, the May of 2021, really represented a moment of national unity among Palestinians, not just in word, but also in action, which is something that made it, I think, so important. We heard then this slogan demonized as a call to genocide or what have you. And I wanted to explain the reality is that this is a call for freedom. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is this demonization of protest slogans is actually not unique to Palestine, not unique to Palestine activism. There's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the ones that it reminded me of is sort of the response to Black Lives Matter. you know? And we heard as that protest chant really captivated a movement that was calling for racial justice in this country, people who zeroed in on the slogan as a way to demonize and delegitimize the people who were calling for racial justice. And they said, well, what do you mean Black lives matter? What about white lives? Are you saying white lives don't matter? Why not all lives matter? And on one end of the spectrum, you had people who were just kind of like ignorant about it.
Right.
And on the other hand, you had people who were deliberately malicious and, wanted to impugn the motives of a movement calling for racial justice by saying that they were actually secretly out for white genocide,
Right.
right? And so we see these things kind of play out in different places. The reality is, from the river to the sea, Palestine is not free today. Palestinians are not free today. From the river to the sea today, there is an Israeli state. That Israeli state controls effectively the entirety of the territory and treats people differently based on who they are. That's the fundamental problem. And this call for freedom responds to that one state reality of apartheid by saying freedom is what we need. And it is the Palestinians in Palestine who are not free. And that's what has to change. And so it shouldn't surprise us that a call that focuses on freedom, that focuses on the rights of people, and that unifies Palestinians is one that is demonized by supporters of Israel and supporters of Israel's apartheid policies because it threatens those very unjust policies in a direct way. It doesn't threaten the existence of Jews in the land. It threatens the existence of a system of injustice. Just as South Africa today continues to exist without apartheid, Israelis and Palestinians can continue to exist without a system of apartheid. What we call for is an end to that system of injustice. And so, this is what that slogan is about.
Another irony is that the uh, from the river to the sea idea is already incorporated by the Israeli government. So if it's a genocidal cry, which Israel defenders claim, then Israel is also based on a genocidal cry, and it's more than a cry. It's in the Likkud Charter, which is Benjamin Netanyahu's political party. Can you talk about that?
I mean, and again, this is one of the sort of like searing hypocrisies of all of us. There seems to be a lot of people who are more outraged at the protest chant of activists calling for freedom and justice than they are about the actual policies that animate a state with the power to actually create those outcomes on the ground, and which has been creating those outcomes on the ground for decades by denying Palestinians freedom across the entirety of the territory. And so, it's hard to take these concerns seriously. And honestly, it does really a disservice to a very legitimate cause of trying to combat anti-Semitism. By trying to say that Palestinians who are calling for freedom and justice in their homeland are actually, engaged in anti-Semitism because of that. It ends up using anti-Semitism and allegations of anti-Semitism as a way to perpetuate injustice. And I think this is one of the reasons, people who see through this, who understand what the Israeli government is doing, are really turning away from, this this sort of response. They see it as empty, and they see it as counterproductive, and in fact dangerous as well. And I think that probably animated a lot of the attitudes of the people who were protesting in front of the DNC yesterday. And I know that that's something that you're going to be covering in this program as well.
I actually wanted to read part of the Likud charter, which people who criticize this protest cry seem to not have any problem with. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable and is linked with the right to security and peace. Therefore, Judea and Samaria will not be handed to any foreign administration between the sea and the Jordan. There will only be Israeli sovereignty. A plan which relinquishes parts of Western Eretz Israel undermines our right to the country, unavoidably leads to the establishment of a Palestinian state, jeopardizes the security of the Jewish population, endangers the existence of the state of Israel, and frustrates any prospect of peace.
It's important to point out this is the original Likud Charter, and it was updated during the sort of peace process era, just to be more clear about this.
Right,
And the language that they chose to use was that the government of Israel flatly rejects the creation of a Palestinian state east of the Jordan River. In case there was any doubt
right,
what the sort of Likud party's vision for the river to the sea is, it's a vision of apartheid. They are not saying from the river to the sea, everybody will have equal rights. They are not saying from the river to the sea, we'll have a binational state. They're saying from the river to the sea, there will only be Israeli sovereignty, and we do not intend to extend equal rights to Palestinians who live there.
right,
Yet it's Palestinians who call for freedom who are accused of having genocidal intentions. It would be laughable if it wasn't so dangerous,
right.
and it really is.